What did you kind of think about some of her talking points?
Well, and
Mhm.
this is one of the things I say, especially for newer content creators who are coming into this space. There is just so first year of law school in my understanding, first year of law school is a weed out year.
Yes.
And they accomplished that by many tasks, but what I understand is a big part of it is reading.
Yes. It's a lot
Okay.
of reading.
That's like coming into any of these male spaces. There's the first year is a weed out year
Mm.
because this has been going on since 2012 and before. When Tom Likas was doing this stuff on the West Coast, before the internet and before YouTube even existed, that's part of the context. So, whatever iteration of the manosphere, the black manosphere you want to say we're in right now, there was content creators, female content creators who were just on the other side. April Mason was one of them. I can
Mhm.
tell you for the better part of 10 years, she's been making content for women. Um, and one of the things that I think, because you're a new guy and you open your platform, you let everybody come up. I understand what you're doing. You have to be diplomatic and let people, because you got to be neutral.
Yeah.
Um, and what I think I'm starting to see is people, your platform, you're not a small content creator. So people are who have already have well established content profiles uh, will come over here when they would never ever go over into the Thunderdome or any of these other platforms because they would have to speak about their evolution or their change. Someone would bring it up, like so
Right.
when you couldn't understand what was going on in the contents in the comment section. I think your reaction was kind of like, "Hey, I'm not. What I'm getting from the comment section is completely different than what I'm seeing."
That's
Well, it's
exactly
because
right.
they saw April Mason a year or so ago basically call black men, hold black men to task on a false allegation that her cousin put out.
Mm.
And that's been well documented. And instead of coming back and saying, "Hey guys, my cousin did such and so forth, and I was in my car and I got a little heated, and I, blah blah blah." No, she doubled and tripled down to the fact that where she brought uh, guys onto her platform to pretty much admonish us men. So that's how a lot of guys kind of were looking at the content, from what I understand. Now, when she did put out the thing where she said she quit, we understood that. We were like, "Yeah, all right, cool."
Right.
And it was kind of like something we had seen previously when another person quit, and she basically said, "Well, I'm not doing this anymore, so I can tell all the truth." And that's what everybody was like, "Okay, so I mean, people know what's going on."
Right.
But when she was on your platform, it was almost like, "Oh, so now you're back to where you were a minute ago." And the thing, and I say, cool, but the notion that, I think who was it earlier, the whole dopeness. I'm like, I, different. And let me also make a big distinction too. When I talk about high value men, I want to make this crystal clear.
Mhm.
There is a difference between being an athlete, entertainer, or a musician and a business person.
Mm.
Due respect, we only get our value after years and years of work, competition, and becoming subject matter experts in a particular field. And no disrespect to those guys on athletics, entertainment, and musicians, they get their money earlier through different channels. So we look at money differently. We
Mhm.
look at what we've had to do. And even women who are dating men from that sphere know it's different than dating men from the business sphere, completely different.
Right.
Even if the money is on par, we're not as loose with it. We are much more, what am I getting from it? Because in a lot of guys' minds is, I didn't have a talent that jumped me to the head of the financial line in my youth. I had
Mhm.
to make myself valuable in a courtroom, in a boardroom, in the surgical room, on scaffolding, in the field of battle, or whatever. So when we start hearing women talking about men are byproducts of doing.
Yes, yes.
I'm
And
like,
let me do this. Let me try to play
go
a
ahead.
clip where she said that. She was basically saying that, and I had
Go ahead.
never,
Go ahead. I'm listening. Go ahead.
yeah, I had never heard this. Give me a second to pull it up. I had never heard this argument put forth before, so I thought it was interesting. Let's hear what she has to say about men and the role that they play in women's lives here.
This worked. It worked for me. It worked, because I'm all excited. I'm like, yes, yes, yes. Girl, if you get yourself right, you do this, become the feminine woman for you first. The man is the byproduct. The man is not the reason why you're here. He is the byproduct. If you do these things, you're not in a hurry to get married. And
Yeah.
so people would always ask me, how do you do what you do when you're not married? I said, because I am a walking example of what I teach.
So let me stop it right there. Which, and I had never heard a woman say this before, but it was interesting to me. But she's basically saying, listen, if a woman doesn't need to try to get the man. What the woman needs to do is become dope. And once she becomes dope, then the man coming to her is a byproduct of her becoming dope, right? So she should become dope, and then all of these men will easily come. And I kind of want to know how you feel about that, because that's going to work maybe for the 9s and 10s, but to be honest, the 9s and 10s we're going to get the man anyway, right? But I never heard of someone calling a man kind of a byproduct.
Well, I want to also go back to something I think I heard in the beginning. Correct me if I'm wrong. A good deal amount of faith, talking about gifting. My gifts came in a different way in God and things like this. So what I'm first off, if we're going to look at it from that being how y'all started the conversation, Adam was not a byproduct of Eve. Quite the opposite. So I don't know where you get that from as a Christian woman. I don't understand how you even substantiate that if we're going to talk about God and gifting.
Yeah, it does. It seems like a big disconnect. And then she was going on talking about how men think we are the validators, but we're really not. Let me play this clip right here. We can kind of see what she's saying.
See, people think that the man is the validator. Although I love you guys, I love a man, just the way y'all walk and how y'all smell and just all of that, right? Mm-hmm. But you're the byproduct. See, women would think or question me, she don't have a husband, because I wasn't supposed to have a husband while I was going through developing who April was. If I would have remarried during that time, I would have been divorced again.
Yeah, so she's basically saying, what women need to work on themselves. And once they work on themselves, then all of these 6-figure men, 7-figure men, 8-figure men are going to come. And what I thought was super interesting is that she was saying, she said later on that once all these 6-figure men, 7-figure men, 8-figure men come, she doesn't need to be in a rush to get married. She needs to start dating this 7-figure man. Then maybe she'll start dating this 8-figure man. Then maybe, sample this 6-figure man over here, and then just take her time and then select from the 6 and 7 and 8-figure man, which of these men is going to be her husband. How does that work in reality?
Well, again, I go back to the original thing. If you're going to be talking about Christians and that kind of stuff, it doesn't work. Eve did not have a selection of men. It was Adam. And Adam definitely was the validator, because God never spoke to Eve. He gave the instructions on what to do in the garden directly to Adam. God, there's nothing in Genesis with God ever speaking to Eve. But even if we want to go further, what we're hearing is modern woman. Right. It's a modern woman empowerment, independent, but I like men. Nature doesn't even support what we're talking about here. Nature doesn't tell women to wait until you get all these men to pick from. That's not what happens. But when you're telling, I did think that there was some truths intersplice with some opinions and some points of view. And when you have a primarily female audience, you got to tell women, like she said in that broadcast, you want to get paid, tell women what they want to hear.
Yes, that's exactly right. That is exactly
But
right.
if you're also going to try to make the turn and start speaking to a broader male audience, you have to try to tell us some good lies. That's why I love my theme song, but it doesn't make any sense. That's why your chat room was going ballistic, because they were like, no, if you have to make yourself dope, you. So women make women dope for men. How do you do that if you don't ask the men what they want? You cannot make the byproduct. You cannot make the end goal. That's why I love my show. What do you want? And what do the kind of men you want from a woman? And it always goes through what we want. See, what we're telling women is get out here and become dope. Get out here and become this and that. And what does that really mean? Get out here and make a lot of money. Get out here and make yourself independent and somehow dark femininity. Was it dark femininity?
Yeah, dark feminine energy, she was saying.
Well, you could say dark feminine energy, and some people will say Jezebel. I mean, I'm not making a judgment either way. I don't have to hang up on sexuality but what I mean, sexuality and meaning that women are supposed to be prudish. But at the end of the day, it sounded like partnership. It sounded as though that when a woman becomes dope, then she's got this plethora of I got options and these men coming out of this and that. Yeah, but are they vetting you to be their wife?
Right.
And that's what we never really get to. Yeah, you can be attractive and you can be you live in Atlanta. I'm in the Buckhead area. I see lots of arm candy. But what I see more often, especially in other races, is wedding rings. Yes. That is the ultimate validation. A man is judged on the kind of woman he can attract. A woman is judged by the kind of man that she can keep. And in the keeping, it becomes last name, legal wedding ring.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You were talking about this whole thing about partnership, right? And April, in this I don't call it an interview, when she just came up and she was speaking, she was kind of, saying that, women had some responsibility in this, but men also had some responsibility in this. She was talking about how men sometimes they are not creating the environment that is necessary for women to really show their true femininity. Let's kind of see where she's going with this.
Place what you do. So when you move the corporate ladder or get successful in your business, that does not mean you don't be the woman. And a lot of times, especially our men, they say they want this type of woman, but they don't create an environment for that woman to actually be. Because they're so used to doing. When they say, I want a strong woman like my mom, well, what was your mother's quality of life? Did she work 4 and 5 jobs? There's no way I could be with a man that wanted me to work every day, take care of the kids, and be his sex kitten, his sexy vixen, his confidant, his peaceful place, and all of those things. So that's why I tell women, you got to decide on what kind of man that you want.
So what do you think about that, Kevin? She's saying, listen, a lot of you men, you don't create a space for your woman to become feminine. You want her to work and you want her to take care of your kids and you want her to have sex with you. How are you expecting a woman to do all of that? If you're not, I guess, making, 100% of the money and you're not allowing her to stay home with the kids. What's your sense of that?
My sense of that is,
because
2.5 million Black men are in the upper in the upper class. There are 40 million Black people in this country. Roughly half are men and women, so that's 20 million. 2.5 of that 20 million Black men are in the upper class. 54% of Black men are single and childless. 61% are in the middle class. So according to the stats, that's providing like a mother sucker if you're picked. See, what this is a lot more of this. I would be a feminine woman if you could provide for me so much that I could quote unquote rest in my femininity. Well, if that's the case, then don't get mad at these very men who can't provide well enough for you. Pick Becky, Marisol, Marlene, or Jamila.
Right.
The difference between what an average white man makes in this country and an average black man makes is right around $9,000. But there's a definite disparity in the way we're treated between the races. And Hispanic men earn below us, and they damn sure get treated better. This is more of that. I'll be the woman you need if you provide. That's conditional femininity, and then women would not accept conditional masculinity.
Correct. And this is kind of what she was saying. And I wonder myself, and you talk to so many women on your shows, and you kind of have a real sense of how they operate. It seems to me, and even April was saying, she was like, hey, I run all of these companies, but I only allow myself 10% of masculinity on this day or 15% of masculinity on this day, because if I go over too much masculinity, then I would just become masculine. And to me, I interpret that as almost that she has a dial, right? And she can just choose when she becomes masculine and when she becomes feminine. And it seems like a lot of women are saying, hey, if you want me to work, right, then maybe I'm not going to be so feminine. If you want me to take care of the kids, maybe you don't get any sex. It's this conditional. Do you see that when you talk with a lot of people who call in?
I see it a lot for justification for why they're failing. But I go back to the original failure. A lot of these women thought their mothers and their grandmothers were fools. A lot of these women, baby boomers, thought the silent generation of women were fools because they stayed with their fathers, and a lot of these women rebelled against the very thing that made the Black community great, family. And then when they get in their late 40s or 50s, then all of a sudden they get these epiphanies. And you go back and say, well, why were we married at a rate of 80+% prior to 1965? Are we saying the women back there were better because they had to work 4 and 5 jobs and all this other kind of stuff? No, because they took pride in their families, their last name, their legacy. They weren't so goddamn selfish.
Right.
This is a lot of selfishness. And it's me, my boss, dope, this, that, and that's fine. My issue is that no other group of women has such poor outcomes and refuses to look in the mirror and the rhetoric that they're talking about. So what they've done in I don't know, how old are you? I'm 52. My
44.
entire lifetime. Okay, my entire life I've heard black men are at the bottom, this, that. But now we have the internet and we have the data to actually go out against these narratives to show that it's not the problem. The problem is not with the selection of men, it's the problem with the selection of wives. Because what would happen is if men are like you or I were to get out here, and if we were to show up with anything other than a Black woman on our arm, and I know what would happen.
Facts.
And the fact of the matter is, instead of they would go after you or me instead of saying, why did Black women lose another one?
Right. And again, to be fair to April, she in that post, that Instagram post that lit it all up, she herself was saying that women are not being accountable. Women are rejecting accountability. They are rejecting responsibility. They do not want to accept some of the flaws and the errors that they're making that are causing maybe some of these men to look in other directions. Right.
Well, I mean, and the thing is, yeah, and here's the thing: telling Black women the truth has a high cost, and some people think they can pay it. But you'll know the first time you tell the truth what happens, the blowback.
Right.
Because the truth is true no matter what you say. Why when we talk about I can't be feminine because I got to work too hard, then I look at these women who come into this country illegally, who I worked in restaurants. I've seen hardworking people.
Yes.
How come Jose can stand out in front of Home Depot and Maria can be a dishwasher, but he comes home and he gets treated like a king and they're broke? And see, here's the net of it. Okay, let's just take the argument. You're right. Black men can't provide. We're behind. We're poor leaders. then where are the non-black men rushing to marry you?
Mm.
I mean, because if you're ready to go, if you're all these dope women, where's Blake, Lee, Ahmed, and Enrique marrying black women in droves, especially the
Right.
higher earners, the
Hey,
ones that have to make. But see, what's funny is when we see a lot of women who tend to go outside the community, they tend to date down.
yes.
And then they become all kinds of feminine. So it's really down to the reality is what we've discussed. The war between in the black community is do you like your male counterparts? And the issue today is now, unlike when I was a young man, men were taking that responsibility on and trying to fix it. Now guys recognize that hell, we're dope. We're hella dope.
Right.
We're dope as mother. We're dope, and white women just don't like you because you're a sex object. They like you because you're a good man. Hispanic women don't just like you because you got a big Johnson. They just like you because you're a good guy. They like you for functional health reasons, not some Mandingo slave Django fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the reality. It's like you can't keep telling women to be dope, and you don't see some dope outcomes. How are we measuring dope outcomes? And if it's on dealing with hooking up, going to conferences, seminars, such and so forth, where are the last names? Where are the properties? Where are the wills? Where are the trust funds? Where's all this stuff? Where's all this stuff? Because if you want, I'm not going to do it this week, but if you look at the stats of what's happened with other groups, the amount of wealth, Tone Talks is talking about this, the amount of wealth the white community made during COVID versus the black community. Marital filings were up at a 50-year high in every community except ours.
Mm. Mm.
And it's not because, and we have been told our entire lives it's because black men are deficient. No, black men are doing just fine.
Yes. What do you think the like the impetus is or the resistance coming from women to kind of change? Because it seems that men are trying to be very, very clear about what we are seeing, and there's this huge resistance. We talk sometimes about weight, which is an issue in our community, and women not wanting to lose weight, which granted it requires a lot of effort, right? Or maybe for some women to express their femininity. April was talking about dialing it in and out. Maybe it's hard for a woman to dial that femininity up because then they start looking weak. It seems like women are practicing this type of conservation of energy where they don't want to expend effort to make their men, their black men happy. Or do you see this, or is it kind of
because when you are 80% of us are raised, they think a lot of black women feel like we're their property. There are mothers, there are babysitters, there are teachers. The image of black men is not really an image of power. So they think why do you think you can have a 20-something-year-old woman come try to tell me about business and she's homeless? I mean, because that's our culture.
Right.
I mean, so to answer your bigger question, why the pushback? Well, because one, when you're desperate, possibility is more important than probability. Because because when you're desperate, possibility is all you got to hold on to. The exception is more comforting than the norm. Because the fact of the matter is when men get older and more successful, they have more options and women have more competition. And at the end of the day, Lee, the black man ain't nothing to compete for. So why should they struggle?
Right.
There ain't nothing to compete for. I mean, you should be just happy that they're willing to talk to you. Well, I could compete for you? Come on, man. That ain't nah.
Yes. Women will absolutely say, because we actually, to really boil it down to a concrete example, April Mason, she made another post about black women fixing black men a plate of Thanksgiving plate. Right. So in terms of like losing weight or in terms of changing, in terms of becoming more femininity, no, we're talking about one single act of putting some collard greens and putting some chicken on a plate.
Wait a minute, bro. Counselor, How can you get a plate when you can't get a smile?
Yeah.
I mean,
takes, yes.
the reality is a lot of brothers are having to see how so many Black women truly feel about the Black male image. And it's not good.
Mm.
It's not good. And I'm glad that a lot of Black men are starting to wake up and realize it's not your fault.
Yes.
It's not your fault. It's not your responsibility for you to change it. It's not. You've had to become who you are through all the trials and tribulations, everything else been put in front of you. You don't have to prove yourself to a woman. That has never been how this works. She's supposed to earn your last name.
Yes.
And that's how it works in every other group. So I'm not trying to get women to become less dope or this or that. And if they're so great one, let's just look at the numbers. At the end of the day, the filings. And if you look at the inversely proportional curve of happiness, especially in the Black community, happiness for Black women is descending at an exponential rate, and happiness is ascending.
Mm.
And after 30 is where it starts, and after 40 is where it really takes off. So if you are late, this is why tonight when I'll be talking about, I'm focusing like a laser on women 32 and above. If you're past the wall, the biological wall that nature put out there, we didn't put it out there, nature did. Okay, if you're past the wall, if the last time you can remember that you were actually an appropriate dress size was an elementary or just high. I mean, seriously, I asked them, when was the last time you remember being a dress size 6? I was never a dress size 6. So you went from the womb to a 22. So if it's been so long since they've had to, even the notion of even competing for a Black man is foreign. So what we're trying to do is they're trying to legislate male attractiveness. They're trying to get men to accept it.
Mm-hmm.
And men just aren't doing it because they don't have to. I posted on my community tab that younger people are opting to not get married for their own reasons. We're of a different generation. See, we saw a world that was. We saw grandparents and people who were married for years and years, whether it was your family or not. We saw a world that does not exist anymore.
Thanks.
And the world that exists right now is extremely competitive. Even here in the South, the stigma on interracial marriage ain't nowhere what it was even 20 years ago. And like Dr. Tia San Johnson will tell you, non-Black women are actively pursuing Black men. I see it every day here in Buckhead.
Yes.
These women don't want to compete. These other women are like, you don't want to compete. They got no problem competing. They got no problem smiling, fixing plates, whatever. So it comes down to a matter is it easier? Is it easier to do what we're asking as men, or is it easier to live the rest of your life alone?
Right. Do you think this is maybe short-term thinking? Because I've even got, a few friends of friends. Maybe you've got a woman and, she's 36 and she's making $65,000 a year and she's got her kid and, maybe she's not very attractive, but she's just willing just to stay at home and, she wants to have a boyfriend, but she's not on any apps. And she's kind of waiting, if we can be honest, that he just kind of shows up at her door, right?
The answer is they're all going to the league. They don't expect it to be them. They are the one that's going to be. That's why I said it's possibility is more important than probability.
Yes.
That's what I said. Exception is more than norm. If you ask your friend, what's the probability that you're going to find a husband's going to find you? They'll tell you they got a 50. Look on my channel. I don't know how actively you watch my content. They will tell you 50, 70, 80% when we currently have a Black marital rate amongst Black women of 26%. And they will tell you they got a better than 50-50 shot. And that's what my show has done. It's shown that no matter what position women in, they honestly think it's going to be them, because here's where it comes back. They believe in faith. God's going to do it for me.
Yes.
And that's why I keep shooting that down. Don't put that on my God. He ain't never said that. And if it ain't God, it's manifestation madness. I'll
Yes.
manifest it, because the reality is the reality is it's less than a 10% chance. And that's too hard for people. It's too hard for women to admit that I have mismanaged my youth. I have been mismanaged my womb. I have mismanaged my time. And I have put myself in the position to where the kind of caliber of man that I would want to spend the rest of my life with does not know me and is not currently vetting me for being anything, much less a wife. Because you ask these women, like your lady friend,
Mm-hmm.
do you have the kind of caliber of man that you would be interested in actively vetting you to be a wife? No.
Mm-mm.
Okay. Have you ever? No. And if you just start asking them, where are these men? Who are they? What are they? And they will tell you, they just expect it to happen. Last point.
Mm-hmm.
When I ask women, forget what I'm saying. I could be all wrong. Bump that. But when you get to retirement age at age 65, are you going to have your $2.4 million to survive on between ages 65 and 85? Cash.
Mm.
And I will have women who are making $50,000 a year, $40,000 a year, $30,000 a year. Tell me, I'll have it. How? Well, I plan on starting a business.
Eyelashes, right?
No. It's not even. It's real estate, stocks. It's something that doesn't require a professional degree. See, because the kind of money they need to make to overcome the lack of what they made in their younger years is going to have to be in excess of six figures. And we know the way to get those: doctor, lawyer, engineer, science, technology, engineering, math, accountant, some sort of professional certification in secondary education. We know when you go to university, they tell you these are the professions that have the higher incomes. But when you go over to liberal arts, humanities, or the business school, these, especially in business, marketing, business administration, communications, all these things, these are these degrees that have the possibility of being to have a higher earner, but the probability is low. So they're sitting here looking and saying, men know that there's no safety net. No one's coming to save us. And if we don't have enough money, the streets are waiting for us. Women honestly have believed that somebody will do it for them. The government, they don't believe that you're going to start to see what's already happening. Tent cities of women and children. That's the largest growing homeless population right now. Young families defined as women and children. It's growing, but they don't. And all of this is, you would rather put yourself in this position versus being what a man is asking for. That's a choice. So you got to think about it. You would rather risk this other than cooperation with a man.
It's amazing. Yes. Listen, thank you so much, Kevin Samuels, the Godfather, for coming over and blessing the stream. Really appreciate you coming over and giving us some of your valuable time to talk to the people and drop some gems.
No problem,
and kind of elucidate what's going on over here with April Mason. So thank you so much.
Well, let me say one thing before I leave.
Yeah.
I think, Obsidian made a good point. She's not an enemy. She's definitely not an enemy.
Right.
The post that she made about, the realities of dealing with the women, all that stuff is valid. So I would not seek to make her an enemy. She's judging the world for women based through her lenses. The opportunities that she may have, if I were to ask her the question, if I would say, do you think that the average woman could get the outcomes? I would love to hear that answer. Right. But I just think that, she was saying people were saying she was speaking out of both sides of her neck. Well, that tends to happen when you're personal here, and then here's the big stuff. So
Yes.
I'll take the fact that she told women this, that, such, and so forth. But that byproduct stuff, I'm not good with that byproduct.
You are exactly right. Shout out to the Kevin Sanders. Thank you so much for coming over. I really, really appreciate it. You are always welcome, brother.
Peace out. Thank you.
You don't have to answer that question.
I'll answer the question. You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the